I just wanted to put up a quick video about some of the geometry terms and how we properly notate them when it goes to your homework and things like that. If you already passed some of these lessons, that's fine. There's no need to go back, but these notes that I'm going to give you today will definitely help you as you move forward. So we're going to first go through the vocabulary, and we'll talk about how to correctly identify and label all the vocabulary that we've learned in 16-1 and 16-2. The first vocabulary term that you probably came across is plane. This doesn't refer to like an airplane, it refers to a flat plane. And basically that's the surface in which we'll be talking about as we go through math. So for all intents and purposes for these lessons, you can imagine a plane as the flat surface that we're working on. So this will be our plane for today. The next word you most likely came across is point. A point represents an exact place on our plane. So it's a place that we label and give a name to. So I'm going to go ahead and put an example right here. A point is usually represented by just a small circle or dot, and then we label it with a capital letter. So this would be point A. So if I was writing this as an answer to a question, I would just write it out as point capital A. The next word we came across would be line. And a line is an infinite amount of points that goes on infinitely in both directions. So it continues in one direction infinitely and forever, and in the other direction infinitely and forever. So what we need to have is we need to have 2 points, and then any line can pass through that going on, and that's how we'll go ahead and name that. So imagine we have point A and point B. Now between these two exists an imaginary line that I will draw straight through and continuing on forever. Not exactly perfect. Mathematically, it should be perfectly straight, but mine's not. And this would be line AB. And we put these little arrows on each end to show that it does not stop here. The only reason we stop it here is so that we don't end up drawing all over the wall, but that is not where line AB stops. It continues on infinitely in that direction and infinitely in that direction. And when we label it as such. So we label it a capital A, capital B, and then we put a line on top of it with 2 open arrows facing each direction. This is extremely important because you're going to see coming up in a few minutes that some of the other things are labeled very similarly. So we need to have that opening there, and that means I'm referring to this line, which continues on infinitely in both directions. Next up, we'll be talking about a line segment. And a line segment is essentially the line that exists, the part of a line that exists between 2 points. So we'll go back to our A and B. I'll put them right here for you. A and B. And as we discussed earlier, a line could continue on infinitely in both directions. But if we're not referring to that line, if we're simply referring to the distance that appears between A and B, then that is what we're referring to. So the line segment starts at A, finishes at B, and this is all that we're talking about when we define line segment AB. And in order to write line segment AB and let us know that we're not talking about the continuation in both directions, we write it out AB, straight line, no arrows on both sides. Some people like to put the little points at each end to show that it comes to an end. But as long as you don't have those arrows pointing off in each direction, your line segment is written correctly. So this is how we notate line segment AB. The next one we're going to talk about is array. Array has a definite start point, but continues on infinitely in one direction. So for example, if we take it back to our points A and B, then array can start at point A, continue through B infinitely in that direction. So that would be ray AB. And we would notate it as such. no open arrow here, but it continues on infinitely through point B. Now with a ray, it is extremely important on how you notate it. Excuse me. Because there could be two different types of rays when we're looking at line AB going on infinitely in both directions. So if, for example, I wanted to talk about this ray would not be labeled ray AB. It would actually be labeled arrow still going to the right, ray B, starting at point B and working its way through point A. So even with the same points, this ray tells me that it's going that way, this ray tells me it's going this way. No matter what, your arrow on top of the 2 points should always be pointing to the right. So you just have to flip the direction of your points. If you're following along with me so far, we're going to make this part a little bit interactive. So I'm going to ask you to identify certain things, and then I want you to be able to identify it on your own, and then I'll give you the answer up here. So the first thing I want us to identify is I would like you to identify line CB. So look up here, trace it with your finger. Where is line CB? So line CB, a line, as we know, goes on infinitely in both directions. So I'm going to start over here at point C, and you can see that it continues out this way and all the way over to B. So this right here is line CB, and in my imagination, I can imagine that the line continues that way and continues that way infinitely. So that would be line CB all the way across. Now I'll switch up the colors, and let's see if we can identify, let's do ray, A, D. So where on here is ray AD, and in which direction does it continue on? As we know, a ray has a definite start point and a definite end point. So ray AD is going to start at point A and then continue on through point D on infinitely out in that direction. Next one that I'd like to do, switch it over to pink. Let's see if we can identify line segment BA. So trace it on here, trace it on the screen with your finger. Where is line segment BA? So because it's a line segment, it has a definite start and end point. So I can start at point B and then work my way through to point A, and that represents line segment BA. There's also numerous points up here that we can identify. So you can put your finger on point D, point A, point B, and point C. Feel free to leave some comments below and identify any other points, lines, line segments, or rays that you can identify up here. I give you a hint, there are a lot.